Computer. Hello and welcome everyone. We are so excited to have you here. Thank you for joining live. Thank you for catching the replay. This is the final episode of the Conscious Conversation series for this season. And I am honored to have such a delighted guest with us tonight. We have the iconic Carola Beresford-Cooke. She is a pioneer in the Shiatsu industry, and I cannot wait to find different bits and different nuggets of wisdom from behind the scenes and discover as much as we can about her magical journey. Carola, thank you very much for accepting our invitation. I want to invite you to say hello to everyone, and we can dive deep into the conversation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. And thank you, Antonia. Can I possibly pin you so that I just see you?
Of course. Be my guest. We can do that.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
That's great. I can still see other people down the side there.
Okay, perfect. So firstly, thank you very much for being here and for being willing to have this conversation with us. You have such an impressive background and you've been such a pioneer in the Shiatsu industry. I have your book with me, which I have read from page to page, and I cannot wait to...
I can't believe you did that.
I was fascinated by it.
Diligent prepping.
I had my first ever Shiatsu session. For people who are listening to us for the first time, I'm not a Shiatsu practitioner. I'm the marketing manager of the Shiatsu Society. But I have had my first Shiatsu session, and following that session, I felt very inspired to open the book. And I went page by page, and I just cannot wait to discover more about the person behind the book. Having read a little bit about yourself as well, I know that you had your first Shiatsu session about 37 years ago, and I was wondering if you'd like to take us all the way back to the basics and tell us how things have started for you.
I think it was a bit longer than that I had my first Shiatsu session, because I think I had it at a very pivotal point in my life, which was around 1978. So that's a long time ago. Anyway, yes. Do you know, I think I first knew that I wanted to do Shiatsu when I was very young. As soon as I knew about acupuncture, it just made sense to me. Somehow, my father was a doctor, and although I was meant to sort of believe everything he said about the human body, sometimes he didn't know how to answer my questions. And then I read about acupuncture, and it seemed magical and wonderful. And I was interested. And then when I read about, pathways in the body, I thought, yeah, why not? And then when I read that you could do it with massage and hands, then I thought, yeah, so I can do that. That'll be good. And I don't know how old I was. Definitely younger than 20. But then it was quite a while. It was another 10 years before I actually got the chance to study. Wow. So the first time I saw it advertised, off I went.
Yeah. Did it all start with a class, or was it more of a magical encounter with that as well?
No, I had the treatment, which was very lovely. But that was a while before the first class. And then, yeah, it all started with the class because it was with Ohashi, who was the great pioneer of Shiatsu in the 70s. He really was the figurehead, if you like, because he wrote a book called Do It Yourself Shiatsu, and he's still around, Master Ohashi. Anyway, that class was with him, and it was in a sort of a big hall at the East-West Center, which was a big center for macrobiotics, which was the main vehicle for Shiatsu at the time. It was like Japanese culture was imported via macrobiotics, and Shiatsu accompanied it. And there were all these people looking very serious, sort of sitting on either side of the hall. And I just went in very quietly and sat down next to a guy who was wearing a white karate suit. And I said, "Are you meant to wear something like that if you do Shiatsu?" And he said, "No, I'm just wearing it to look flash." And And it turned out that this was Michael Rose, who may be a name that's familiar to many of the people watching or listening. And he's a very unsung hero of the Shiatsu world. He went to study with Masunaga right in, ages before Masunaga came to Europe. He went to Japan to study with Masunaga. He'd already, by the time I met him in 1978, he'd already done Shiatsu for about 3 or 4 years, and he's always been very modest about what he does. He's never written anything. He's never, widely internationally taught. He's never emblazoned himself on the Shiatsu scene. But he was really the father of Shiatsu in the UK, because from when I met him at that class, then he went on to hold Tuesday morning sessions where anyone who was interested in Shiatsu could come. And it was just in his little flat in Maida Vale in London. And people used to turn up and we'd give each other Shiatsu, and there was lots of sort of and ow and all sorts of noises going on. And we were all clambering around on top of each other without the faintest idea what we were doing. Didn't know what we were doing at all. But some of the, the big names of Shiatsu came. There was Elaine Liechti, who became the secretary. I know you've done a conscious conversation with her, and she became she's just been, a leading light of Shiatsu ever since. And there was Bill Palmer, that a lot of people may know. Oh, you've done one with him too, so there you go. And Peter Camp, who was chair of the Shiatsu Society for a while. And yeah, so there were a few luminaries who came. And then after Michael had gone to study with Masunaga in Japan, he came back and he knew an awful lot more. And he taught us all what he knew. And it was absolutely great. And it's such a shame that more people don't know about him. He's pretty much retired now. But he really was the big, and did amazing Shiatsu. I mean, just beautiful and very, very Japanese style. He's quite small and relatively stocky, and he was just like a bear the way he used to do Shiatsu. I used to love watching it, and amazing to receive as well. Wonderful. So that was how I progressed for a while. And then what happened? I was just working. I was just doing it. At the time, I was a beautician in Harrods. And I didn't do many body massages, although that was, what I really loved most about being a beautician. Mm-hmm. I did more like, eyelash dyes and facials and things like that, which I still love. I love a good facial. But I didn't do much. I didn't do any Shiatsu in Harrods. They did ask me because I talked about it a lot. And the lady who ran the Harrods beauty salon said to me, "Oh, this Japanese thing that you do you think you would like to offer it here? And what would you require?" And I said, "Well, we'll need a futon on the floor." And she said, "The floor? I don't think we can do that in Harrods." So that was that. We didn't do that. But I just got people on the floor whenever I could, the hairdressing department. I just grab people and say, "Come on, just get on the floor. Let me do some Shiatsu." And I just did the same routine that I'd learned from Ohashi. And I did that, I think, for years, 5, 6 years. I didn't do anything else. I didn't know what I was doing. I just did the same framework, start on the back, do the stretches, diagonal stretches, work down the back, do it with the palms, do it with the thumbs, etc. I just did the same thing. And do you know what? It was the most important time in my practice, really, because I didn't know what I was doing, and I just did the same thing again and again and again on different bodies. My hands began to learn what was different in different people. And sometimes I just get an impulse to go somewhere else and do something somewhere else. And without knowing and thinking and planning what I was going to do, I think it was incredibly valuable. And this really is how people study in Japan and really continue to work in Japan. That is very much the Shiatsu mode, and indeed it's the Japanese mode, really. There's a form, you follow the form. You know, whether you're doing martial arts, you follow the form. Whether you're doing flower arranging, you follow the form. If you're doing tea ceremony, you follow the form. You do the same thing, and you don't think about what you're doing. You just do the form. And I think it's the most extraordinary way of approaching body work, because it's so different from the Chinese way. The Chinese way is like, you know, you have this theory, perhaps it was handed down in your family for generations, or it was written by your teacher or whatever, or it's, you know, it's in an acupuncture book somewhere, and you apply it. Of course, there is room for intuition, but the Japanese is like completely the opposite way. You start from the body and you work your way up to the theory. So you just do the body, just body, just body. Even in Japanese philosophy books, you know, where they're really writing about quite abstruse things, but they will always bring in the body, which is something that European philosophy doesn't do at all. It's all about the mind. So the Japanese attitude is so much like the body is where you start. And really, this isn't turning out to be more a conscious conversation. This is more of a monologue.
I am just taking in, I'm taking in. So please do continue.
But you see, actually, I mean, in East Asian medicine, the body has a soul. That's one of the 5 aspects of the soul. And it's the po, the intelligence of the body. And if you really kind of think about this concept, it's so true. I mean, if we do meditation, I mean, when you're beginning to learn meditation, you start with getting the body right, don't you? And then you go into your breath, and that's in the body. And then you begin to listen to the soul of the body. And if you have experiences in meditation, then they usually come to you through the body. Some kind of sense of expanding, or some sense of light coming, or I don't know. And then you can descend deeper into spaces in the body. And you find that the body is a whole world of experience and sensation and insight. And I think that's what comes to you when you work the Japanese way. And am I okay to go on? Just rattle on.
Of course, please be my guest.
I know that
so many notes.
I know that I've had some talks with John about how I feel about Shiatsu and the way it's going. And I have expressed my thoughts that we've kind of lost that. We've lost that because people are so anxious to find out why and how to do things in body work. Why are you doing it? Have you got a diagnosis? What are you going to do about this particular situation? Even if it's, you know, doing it with soul and with care and with intent, it's still not taking that real step away from the mind and like really just going into the body. If we're lucky, that's something that comes with experience. But I still feel that it would be good for us to start people off that way. I feel incredibly lucky that there were very few classes when I started, that it was just, you know, trying to find clients and then just doing it, just working on people. And so that I had, in a way, my own apprenticeship with the body rather than the mind. And I really needed that, because I am Mrs. Mind. I'm big on theory and why and wherefore. And as soon as I could, I started researching that. I even went and studied blooming acupuncture so that I could find out why and what to do with my shiatsu. And it wasn't enough for me. And it's not enough for most people, I think, in the West. We always want to, learn more, do more, get it right. Please get it right. Help people, obviously. Learn more to help people and get qualified so that we can help more people. And the emphasis is all like at the top, not down there in the body somehow. And that humble doing of things, just sticking to the form. Don't worry about the reason why.
I hear a lot about the discipline, the repetition behind it, the fact that the mind gradually gets out of the way. And I'm wondering whether you've noticed any differences between the Eastern and the Western mind. How have you been able to find a bridge between them?
I could enlist Dawn here, couldn't I? But I haven't had for a start, Eastern mind already. Chinese mind and Japanese mind, I think, are very, very different. And so then also the Indian mind is very different, and the Tibetan mind is very different. So, but there is a propensity in the West to, obviously to want to know why, to explore. Joseph Campbell, who wrote The Hero's Journey and who explored the mythology of all the different nations so as to try and find a sort of like universal mythology, he said that possibly the differences between West and East go back to archaic times, the Ice Age, because the Ice Age was in the West, and therefore people were hunters. They were solitary people who roamed the forests. Whereas from the Indus Valley eastwards, agriculture had begun, and people banded together in villages and protected their crops, and a sense of community developed. And so, whereas the West is very much about the individual and perhaps the leader and the hero and the explorer, the East, this is what Joseph Campbell is saying. I kind of agree, maybe, possibly. The East will be much more about cooperation and seeing yourself as part of a whole, and following a pattern and ancestry and all these kinds of things. I don't know if that's true. I think I can see Dawn nodding in the corner. So so possibly that's got some validity to it. And I certainly think that Christianity has made a huge difference. And the East likes Christianity too, and I think the heart is something that's not much talked about in the East, actually. Not in the same way, I think. And for me, discovering the heart center is something that I'm very much engaged with now, even though I'm not doing Shiatsu anymore and haven't done Shiatsu now for about 3 or 4 years. But I think the heart is a very useful place to come from when you're doing Shiatsu, as long as it's rooted in Hara. So
from the Hara through the heart.
From the Hara to the heart. Yeah.
You've mentioned that Christianity also had an influence. I'm wondering if you can develop a bit more on that, whether to see if there's a spiritual connection there, or how did you filter things through?
How did I filter things through? Well, I wasn't actually brought up a Christian. So I didn't have any Christian shackles to free myself from. But I think Christianity can really, it influences us to be the good girl, be the good man, and really, I think if you're enlarging your journey as a healer, then you have to accept all sides of yourself, not just the good ones. You have to really have your shadow there so that you can understand other people's. We are a complete spectrum of vibration, and we work with other people who are the same. Well, totally different, but they're along the same spectrum. And if we're not admitting things in ourselves, if we have this concept of sin is so essential in Christianity, or at least the Christianity that we've received. So if you've got this sense of sin, then it's going to be difficult for you to recognize it in yourself. And then it's going to be difficult for you to recognize it in the people that you work with, I think. Maybe you did catch me on the hop there, Antonia. It's like, no, it's never, not something I've ever considered. It's how Christianity might influence, or spirituality might influence your healing journey.
I was curious of your perspective because Shiatsu is seen like such a whole practice. It's wholesome and takes care of the body, the emotional plane, the mental plane, the spiritual plane as well. And oftentimes maybe people can be alienated because they don't really understand what it is. So I was wondering whether you found any connections with that, but the answer that you gave me was incredibly beautiful, and I'm really happy that I've opened the space for that. Since we were mentioning the Eastern and Western sides along the way, I'm wondering if you've noticed any differences in terms of how the students are taught Shiatsu in both sides of the world.
Well, you know that you had a conscious conversation with Nicola Lee. So she told me about when she studied Shiatsu in Japan. They weren't taught meridians.
Okay.
They were taught 3 lines. So you bring the arm out and you do 3 lines. And maybe you bring the arm this way, you do 3 lines. On the back, you do 3 lines. The inside of the leg, 3 lines. This is exactly how the meridians are laid out. So you do the meridians without actually thinking about it and without looking for them. Whereas listen, I haven't taught Shiatsu apart from a postgraduate level for many, many years. So I don't know how the early stages of Shiatsu are taught now. But how it used to be was that you would begin by learning to crawl on people. And then you would learn a very, very simple routine, which was palming and thumbing. I don't think it was the 3 lines. And then gradually you would begin to fit the meridians into that framework. And my experience as a teacher in those days, we're talking, I suppose, the 80s and early 90s is when I was still teaching beginners. The Shiatsu just got so bad. It would be great receiving a Shiatsu from a complete beginner. Some of them. But as soon as the meridians came in, people would go up into their heads. And it was really all the stuff about, keeping your weight underside, moving from hara, moving from the hips, relaxing your shoulders. All of that just went by the board. And suddenly it would all be about head and thumb and mother hand if you were lucky. And it didn't feel good at all. And that's why I think you really need those years of just doing something really simple on lots and lots of different people. How we could achieve it, I do not know. We can't really, because people want to get a qualification. They want a certificate, and they want it as soon as possible. And how we've had to fight to get the members to agree to, in the past, to 500 years of Shiatsu, 500 hours of Shiatsu training. They've not been keen at all. They want to do it quicker. So I don't know how we can do this.
Yeah. Especially nowadays when everything happens so fast. I remember even when I was doing my yoga teacher training, there were qualifications that would take less than 40 hours. So people just want the degrees and they want to do things as soon as possible. And the
Yeah.
fact that you've mentioned going back to the basics, reverse engineering in a sense, the practice itself, putting the theory on the side just to
Yeah.
see how your body guides you, how the field guides you, and the common field that you make with the other person. So you notice what comes to the surface. I think that's precious experience, and unfortunately, it's something that tends to be lost in nowadays
Yeah.
society.
I think something else that's fortunately we've adopted it from the East. Uh, the In the study West and East is that we've inculcated the working with qigong and tai chi and body centered practices that are also reflective.
Mhm.
And I think it's absolutely so vital that we do that. In the East, people don't have to do that so much because until very recently, these practices just were a part of pretty much everyday life.
Mhm.
But that is, anyway, how these kinds of healing started. You know, acupuncture, even acupuncture, and the concept of chi and the meridians began, way back in time, second century BC. And they began with doing exercises, the what's known as the Mawangdui scrolls, beautiful illustrations of people doing these lovely Tai Chi movements or Qigong movements with their flowing sleeves. And it was really, the first time that I think people began to experience chi and how to work with it. So people would work with it in their own bodies first, and then gradually it became handed over to a physician. And I think we've reached the peak of that now in the West in medical practice. It's like people don't know their own bodies anymore. It's extraordinary to me. I've been trying to work with my husband on getting him a bit more flexible, and just trying to get him to do cat cow, that yoga thing where you just arch your back different ways. He doesn't get it. I mean, I've shown him, I've talked him through it about 3 times. It's like so many people in the West are just unaware of how they can use their bodies. Obviously, with him, we're going to get there in the end. It's proving a bit of a struggle.
No, I do notice this in other industries as well, including the yogic background. Many times people don't feel safe in their bodies and they cannot follow the coordinates, as if there's no muscle memory there. So that needs to be developed gradually. I'm wondering whether you've noticed a specific way of touching the clients in order to activate that muscle memory, and if so, how has it worked, or if there are any tools that you discovered along the way that can help?
I just think the whole of Shiatsu is a way of doing that.
Okay.
And I think what makes yoga and qigong and tai chi different from other forms of body exercise is the actual, the complete extension of a limb. Probably it doesn't show on the screen, but I'm extending my arm all the way out to the tips of my fingers and then further, so I can go all the way across the valley, which you can't see, with my fingers. And I think that sense of total extension, it's working in the body, it's working with the fascia. I think it's a whole facial line that's being extended, but also it works with the mind because there's that sense of as the movement extends all the way, and then you get that feeling of it's going beyond your body
Mhm.
as well. And this is a part of this is something that you do discover when you do shiatsu, that just it's not simply pressure on the skin, it's penetration through the skin and penetration as deep as the client will let you, into that space within that I talked about, how we discover in meditation. You just go into spaces in the body. And go into spaces with the breath. And then you can actually enter that sphere, which is a part of the body, but which is also a part of the experience beyond the body. And I think that that's actually something that's quite natural to us. And I think that beginners, you know, if they're tuned in right, and they can do it really easily. But what makes it hard to do is thinking about what you're doing. And making a decision. You know, I'm going to work the stomach meridian to reduce the heat in the head. Or even, well, once I get down here, I'm really going to focus on drawing the heat down from the head. Even that, which is definitely a step up from the mere decision to do it, but the decision to feel it. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so even when we want to make our shiatsu and our shiatsu teaching about intention, I'm a little wary these days of the word intention, because how can you intend to feel something? You just feel what you feel. So for me, much more recently, not in the past when I first wrote the book, but much more recently, shiatsu has been about listening and receiving, and you know, what would you like me to do, being invited much more, which doesn't mean to say that it was light or delicate, because actually quite often people really want a lot. They go in more, ooh, I'm going in more.
I hear a very big difference between keeping things structured and intellectual and actually allowing yourself to feel more expansive and to see what comes up in the moment, rather than having a plan or an intention behind it. You've mentioned that your father comes from came from a medical background, and I'm wondering whether that has influenced anything in your practice.
I think I've had quite a facility with the medical terminology. So I do understand that people, your average layperson in the West, doesn't really want to hear much about energy, and which isn't a very good way of explaining ki either, or chi. I don't think as energy. It's much more than that. So yeah.
Could you expand on the definition of ki? How do you see it?
How do I see it? It's that combination of it's the soul in the body, if you like. It's the place where matter and non-matter meet and interchange, which essentially is yin and yang, if you want to put a label on it. But there is a bridge from the physical dimension into the non-physical dimension. And I think that bridge is reached through working with ki, so that you can actually, maybe bridge isn't such a great phrase. So it isn't such a great word, but it's this connection, it's this intermeshing of the physical. The non-physical world is embedded with the physical world, that they are together. So, I mean, the character for ki is steam and, well, the character for chi is steam and rice together. So the rice is the physical, the steam is the non-physical.
So you have the energy and the matter.
Yeah.
Perfect. No, this is so wonderful. It's such a great insight that you're providing us. I'm wondering, with obviously consideration to the client confidentiality, have there been any memorable moments throughout your career, some memorable stories that you'd like to share with us?
The one that springs instantly to mind was actually during a time when I was quite despairing about shiatsu. It might be surprising that people who've made their life doing shiatsu can sometimes be despairing about it. But for me, it's been, you know, shiatsu has been my life for so long. Obviously, I would get despairing at times. So I was working in this little, really tiny little sort of almost a shack in the middle of Cardigan Town in West Wales, where I live. And it was a very minor practice. People in West Wales are very suspicious of anything new, let alone something Japanese. Anyway, this old man, I was just feeling, I don't know, I can't do shiatsu. I can't do it. I'm no good. I can't get anybody better. All my clever fixes don't work. All my knowledge of points. Honestly, I never managed to get that bloke's knee better. I'm useless. So then this old man comes in when I'm feeling pretty much like this. And I say, oh, okay, so why are you here? And he started with this long list of complaints. And I was thinking, oh, God, I can't do anything about all this. And I said, look, I'm going to stop you there because I feel at the moment I'm really not in the business of making people better. I'm sorry. And he lit up. He said, oh, that's great, because I really didn't want to see anybody. So I said, well, shall we just see? You're here now. Shall we just see what we can do together? And you can tell me what you want and what you feel. And then, so we proceeded to have a wonderful hour together. And, and we carried on working together for quite a long time. And yes, he didn't mention all his miserable old complaints anymore. He was much more interested in the process of what I was doing and how he felt about it. So it was great.
How did you feel after that session? Because you've mentioned that you began the session slightly discouraged.
Oh, I felt excited and very amused. It was
The magic of Shiatsu.
Yes. And it's so lovely when you get somebody that you really like, It's such a good feeling.
I can appreciate that. Carola, thank you very much. I'm very conscious of your time. I do have another question if you allow me. And in the meantime, if anyone would like to prepare one or two questions, you've had such a wonderful career and you've contributed to the shiatsu industry in a way that I don't think anyone can repay you back at any point. So firstly, I want to express my gratitude towards that. And then if anything comes to mind, thinking of someone at the beginning of their journey, maybe a shiatsu practitioner, what are a few things that you would like to tell them with the wisdom that you have today?
I would like to say just do lots of shiatsu. And I would like to remind them of the posture. I would like to say, do remember to keep your shoulders relaxed. Do remember not to tense up. I would just like to say the most bog standard, ordinary things to them, because I think those are the most important things to remember. And I think I would say, try not to look for things, try not to understand, because sometimes it's just not possible to understand what's happening. Just enjoy it and relax. It's not very inspiring, is it?
I think it is.
It is.
I think it is.
I think what we all need to do.
Yeah. In a world full of information, I think this is one of the most inspiring things that you can share with people. So thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you.
If you'll allow me, I'd like to open the space for any questions from any of our participants. Just keep in mind that you will, in case you do have your camera on, you will show on the recording, which will go up on YouTube. So in case you wouldn't want any of that, just make sure the camera is off, okay? I'll leave the space. I'm going to look for the first microphone. John, I see you there with the hand. Just unmute the microphone for me.
Hello, Carola.
Hi, John.
Thank you for that. That was really inspiring. And we've talked before Christmas, and we talked just recently about it. And one of the other things that you mentioned was your reservation about Shiatsu trying to align itself to sort of Western medical thinking, the vagus nerve, and then it's something else, and then it's something else. And I'd love you to articulate that, because on the one hand, as Shiatsu practitioners, we'd love to, if you like, be a complementary therapy to people who are being treated in our NHS, for example. But on the other hand, you were expressing a concern that we can align ourselves and try and sort of change and compromise to do that. And I'd just love to hear your perspective on that balance, or whether it should just be separate.
I don't know if I can fully answer the question, because that was actually an incredibly complex question. I'm personally, I think this must be a very personal point of view. I'm personally not very happy about medicalizing Shiatsu too much, because I think once you start talking about the vagus nerve, then you're going to want to know what points are going to activate the vagus nerve, and then you're going to have the intention to activate the vagus nerve. And I think it's more useful really to have a sense of just being with the person and doing what you best do. I think possibly the Seiki approach is what I'm kind of going towards here, the complete, absolutely in the moment thing. But I'm not doing it anymore, is the truth. And people do come with medical conditions, and there are specific points that will have specific effects. I mean, a friend of mine has got macular degeneration, and so she's going blind. And so I always do bright and clear, the gallbladder point on the lower leg. I just press it, when we're having a chat, I'll just press the point on her. And it really, really helps. Bladder 1. So, there are medical conditions, and it's good to know the science. It's really good to know the science. What's a bit tricky is when we try and put the science and the Shiatsu together, because they're just so different. Equally, I don't know how we can avoid doing it, because that's the way the world is going. And that's the way that all therapies are going. And it's the way the BBC is going when it does its science programs. It's not, everything's becoming more and more orthodox, and you've got to align yourself somehow with something scientific if you want to be accepted at all. And it's just really difficult to know how to escape from that. So does that kind of, it's not an answer, it's just a reiteration of the problem, really. But I do have my own personal view, which is that everything, oh no, I'm not going to that will just go into hours of philosophy then. So, that's the problem. Now that I'm not actually working on bodies anymore, I just philosophize, which is really the best thing when you're answering a question about Shiatsu. Yes.
Thank you very much for that. If there's anyone who has another question, I'll give it a few more seconds. Just unmute your microphone. And if not, I'm going to take this going twice. And there we are. Carola, thank you very much for all your wisdom, for all the inspiration that you've shared with us, for taking the time just to be here with us and share bits and nuggets from your story. We really appreciate your time. And
thank you very much. I'm sorry, I have really rattled on quite a lot. Thank you for being so complimentary, Antonia. It's very sweet.
My pleasure. I'm honored. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining live as well. I'm going to stop the recording, and we'll see you again soon.